Shall we move on to the news?
Sure.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South American. All the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press. Fly.
Well, the first bit of news today is news regarding the Game Brain podcast, because I'm happy to announce that we have officially made Dimitri internet famous, which was always my secret victory condition on this podcast. There is a 18xx podcast called The Train Rush, which I have been listening to for quite a while and have enjoyed for a long time. They dedicated their last episode entirely to discussing an argument Dimitri made on the Game Brain podcast. If you go to The Train Rush and listen to an episode called The House of Fun, which was the last one, they discuss an episode that we did in which Dimitri made a multi-pronged argument on what makes a game fun even when you're losing. And they analyzed Dimitri's argument from multiple standpoints and had a very respectful yet slightly disagreeing conversation about it. And I was flattered that somebody built an entire podcast episode around one of our podcast episodes, but it's also thoroughly entertaining and quite possibly better than the original that it is based on. So I recommend that you guys check that out if you want to. It's called The Train Rush. It's their last episode. And yeah, shout out to the Train Rush hosts for doing that. I thought that was really cool. Next, we have a lot of expansion information coming out this week. Most of our news is expansion based. The first bit of news here is we have some information on the Wingspan Oceania expansion. Jennifer, do you like Wingspan?
Nope.
Not for you, eh?
No.
Well, then feel free to tune out for a few moments here. The new Wingspan.
I never tune out. I'm always listening.
Well, I think this is an expansion that might speak to some people who had issues with Wingspan, because to me, the biggest flaw in Wingspan, which by the way is a game that I do enjoy and my wife and I play together and is one of her favorite games, is that the egg strategy is pretty strong. If you just go eggs, you will be competitive. And if you don't go eggs, you won't be. And this Wingspan Oceania expansion is coming with brand new player boards, entirely new replacements for your old player boards that change the rewards that you get whenever you put a bird card down on your player board. And they have changed the way that eggs will work on the player board. So that seems to be an attempt on their part to address a potential issue that a lot of players seem to have, especially if you look at the player board, the message boards. It seems a lot of people are a little bored of the egg strategy being super strong. Was that one of the things that you didn't enjoy about it, Jennifer, or something totally different?
No, it was a light game. It just didn't appeal to me. As you know, I'm kind of a heavy gamer, and the game has to be kind of, really different, like First Contact or Search for Planet X, for me to engage with it that much. So it was very pretty.
Yeah.
And if I still had my old meetup, I'd certainly have it because, it's a nice introductory game.
Sure.
But it's just not for me.
Yeah. Nope, I totally get that. And I'm with you on that. But lighter games have to really be exceptional for me to be interested in. But this one does scratch a good itch for me because it is a game I can play with non-gamers alike. And the theme, I think, really draws a lot of people in. The next game that we have an expansion announced for is a game that I know you like because you taught this to me at a convention. And you said it was one of your favorite games at the time. Grand Austria Hotel is getting an expansion. Jennifer, do you still feel positive about Grand Austria Hotel?
What happened with Grand Austria Hotel is that I felt it and Lorenzo were too small. I mean, as far as, well, do you want to play this or do you want to play that? And Grand Austria Hotel, had in my opinion, well, I wouldn't say fatal flaw, but the flaw of being long as heck with 4 players.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I remember at the time You walked over to a table and saw me playing Lorenzo and said, "Why are you playing that when Grand Austria Hotel exists?" And I said,
I
"Oh, I
know.
haven't played it." And you
No.
said you would teach it to me, and then later that afternoon you taught it to me.
Right, but you know what? Grand Austria probably is the better game,
Mm,
but it's not the better four-player game.
right. Yeah. Okay. I can see
And
that.
and you know the thing about Grand Austria also, again, we come back to accessibility, right? It's
Hmm.
just it makes more sense to people.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. I can see thematically how it makes a little more sense, and the theme is more fun. You're running a hotel and a cafe, and
Right.
um, Lorenzo is definitely my preferred one. But I really like Grand Austria. I own them both, and when it comes to Simone Luciani games, they're definitely at the top of the list for me. So it is getting expansion. It's called Let's Waltz. They are describing it as a large expansion for the base game that contains 5 modules. Little is known yet about these modules, but Lookout Games, which is the publisher, is bringing it to Kickstarter, which is I think they've never done a Kickstarter before, as far as I know. It's coming to Kickstarter on October 22nd. And I imagine they're going to have a lot of fancy bells and whistles for the original. I would be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised. They do say they're going to have some really cool upgrades, and really cool upgrades is in quotes. So there you
Okay.
go.
Well, maybe they'll address the four-player issue. I mean, what happened? I moved from a house of 2,700 square feet to a house of 1,800. I lost 900 square feet. I can't do everything.
Right. No, of course. And that's a
And
good thing. It
so it
forces you to make
became
some
Grand
choices.
Austria versus Lorenzo, and I just felt that Lorenzo played better with max players.
Right. Yeah. And I quite like Lorenzo with the expansion too, which brings it up to 5 players. I don't feel it adds any time to play with 5, and I think it's quite good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see what they do on October 22nd to check out that Kickstarter. The next expansion, Board Game Geek has said that this is a record for the longest time in between the publishing of a game and the releasing of an expansion. The base game to this debuted in 1997, and in 2021, it is getting its very first expansion. Jennifer, do you have a guess at what that might be?
I did when I first read about it, but I forgot.
You know what it is. So the game is For Sale, which is
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which is a really great filler. A game I've really enjoyed. Very similar to the Knizia game, Modern Art. Is that what it's similar to? Or no, it's it's the other one. The one that Tom was talking about last week. I forget the economic one, but it's very similar. It's a quick filler game. And it's getting its first expansion ever called For Sale Advisors. Very little is known about it right now, other than the expansion adds a third phase to the classic game, with players starting the game by bidding to hire advisors who will then assist them in the second and third phases of the game. So it sounds like asymmetrical powers here, probably?
I don't know. That sounds really strange, and it doesn't sound good. But well, I mean, For Sale, there's so few games that just you put them out there, you explain it for 5 minutes, we play it, we put it back, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it is a very
And
fast game.
adding,
Yeah.
powers just kind of destroys that.
Yeah. Potentially, yeah. Well, it seems like they're also trying to sort of brand For Sale as a whole line of games now, too, because in 2021, Eagle Gryphon Games is going to be releasing For Sale Autorama, which is a game for 3 to 6 players in which you can buy and sell vehicles, cars, motorcycles, RVs, and semis over 3 distinct phases. And this is a base game of For Sale with a new car theme added to it. So,
It better be better than Automobile. That's all I'm
yeah,
saying.
right. I know, with that name. Yeah. So, we haven't heard a lot about For Sale since 1997, and someone decided we needed a whole lot more For Sale in the next year. So we're going to be getting it. Moving on. In board game news, one of the biggest video games of the last 10 years is going to finally have a board game. That video game is The Last of Us, which is the dark and depressing zombie father-daughter game. And now CMON has picked up The Last of Us IP and is putting out the Last of Us board game, which we know very little about. Other than that, I imagine it will have a lot of miniatures. Jennifer, I imagine as someone who is not interested in violent and dark video games that you have not played The Last of Us?
Nope, have no plans to.
Yeah, it's super depressing. I sometimes on the rare occasion on the rare occasion I will show my wife a video game, and I showed her the first 5 minutes of Last of Us and she walked out of the room and she said, this is super depressing.
Right. And, I mean, if people want depressing, just read New York Times. Right? Okay.
Exactly. Moving on with expansion news. This is our last expansion news, but this is an expansion for a game that I love, and this is a must-buy expansion for me because why not? This is the first expansion to Just One, my favorite filler of the last many, many years. Might be my favorite filler of all time, my favorite sort of party game filler. The expansion is called Just One New Begriff. I don't know what that translates into, but it's just more cards. Why not? Just more cards. I've actually played Just One enough to the point where there are a handful of cards in there that I know what some of the words are on that card, which is funny. That's how much I played it. So more cards is definitely a boon for me. Jennifer, do you like Just One?
I've never tried it. I would be willing to try it because I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I think it's just a brilliant, beautiful. I think it's a classic, sort of like Codenames. When you first played it, you're like, oh, this is a classic. Like, to me, Just One is it's even 10 times simpler than Codenames. And I mean, you can teach it in 30 seconds. And I've taught it probably to 100 people now, and I've never found one person who didn't absolutely love it. So it seems to be, and mostly I play it with non-gamers, and it's like their minds are blown when you show them this game. Next up is an exciting announcement from Prospero Hall. Prospero Hall is the, Target exclusive board game designer. Well, maybe not exclusive. I think they're in other places too, but they're definitely always in Target. And they like to take movies that we love from the 80s and 90s and turn them into board games. And they've done that here. We have the Groundhog's Day board game coming out. This is a 2 to 6 player design by Prospero Hall that plays in 15 to 25 minutes.
Are you sure they haven't just redone Monopoly?
I hope it's not Groundhog's Day Monopoly Edition. This hopefully is an entirely new game, but they always seem to take cool Euro mechanics and find a way to make a very accessible, big box game for your everyday gamers. This says, live the events of Groundhog's Day over and over again as Phil Connors. Each day in Groundhog's Day, the game, you attempt to play cards quickly and in order without communicating to the other players before time runs out. Does that sound like another game to you, Jennifer?
I don't know. I'll try it because I really do like Pan Am. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this sounds like The Mind to me. I mean, that when I hear that description, attempting to play cards quickly in order without communicating, I think that's just The Mind.
I gave The Mind away to a friend who dearly still loves it.
Yeah, it's one of those games that people have arguments about whether or not it's a game, but it is one of those fun games that you can teach other people who maybe haven't played a board game in 20 years, and it often blows minds. So yeah, we don't know when that's coming out. Probably they seem to publish their games really quickly after announcing them, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get Groundhog's Day by the end of the year. Last tiny few bits of news. Root is now, the digital game has been on Steam for a little bit, but it is now available on iOS and Android. I haven't tried it on either of those, so I can't speak to the stability there, but I love it on Steam. I think it's fantastic. And lastly, if you like to play board games on Board Game Arena, a handful of great games were added this week. Tekkenu, Tawantinsuyu, and The Crew are all now available in beta on BGA. So go and get your games in on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to play TWantinsuyu on Board Game Arena. Maybe I'll hit the pod up and see if I can get a game going.
I would love a game. You've played it, right?
A ton.
Well, I would. If you're willing to teach it, I'd love to teach.
Sure. Candace was kind enough to invite me to a demo for it.
Right.
And so, and then the developer was kind enough to give me a link to the Tabletopia implementation.
Right.
So
Right. And I remember in the beginning you said that you preferred Tawantinsuyu to Tekenyu, but I feel like your opinion on Tekenyu has only gotten better over time. Where do you stand on it now?
Yeah, because what happened, I felt the decrees were unbalanced. Yeah. And so, I gave the worst, what I thought were the worst decrees to the Mikey of Board Games, Bruce, right? And he was able to win with all of them.
Oh, okay.
It's not unbalanced. But that's okay.
All right. But you maybe feel that they're both great games now?
I would love to play the other game many more times, as much as I've played Tekenyu.
Right.
Because it just, I've been playing the other game with only 2 people, and that may not be its best presentation.
All right. Well, let's see. Let's try to get a 3 or 4 player game of that in this week. I'd really like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.